The late autumn wind swept through the mountain ridge, carrying with it the sharp scent of pine and the faint echo of a world that had long forgotten these hills. Jona Rose adjusted the strap of her canvas pack, her boots crunching against the thin crust of frost that had settled overnight. She was no stranger to solitude. She had sought it, in fact, when she bought the small cabin at the edge of Weller's Ridge 2 years ago. The cabin had been cheap, weather-beaten, and half sunken into the earth like it was trying to hide from time itself. But to Jona, it was perfect. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The mountains didn't ask questions. They didn't pry into why she'd left her life behind in the city, or why she sometimes woke in the night whispering names that no longer had faces. That morning, she was cutting through the old forestry trail, scouting for fallen branches she could split for firewood, when she heard it. At first, she thought it was the wind, just another ghostly whistle through the hollow trees, but then it came again. A cry. Not an animal. A child's cry. Her heart stumbled in her chest. She froze, head tilted, listening. The sound was faint but unmistakable. Soft, broken sobs drifting up from somewhere ahead. Jona broke into a run, boots sliding on the cold mud. The crying grew louder, more desperate. She followed it down a narrow slope that dipped toward an overgrown clearing she'd never noticed before. Ferns tangled the ground, and through them jutted the moss-covered edge of something round and stony. An old well, forgotten by time. The sound was coming from inside. Jona dropped her pack and rushed forward. "Hello? Can you hear me?" she called, voice trembling. The sobbing stopped for a heartbeat, replaced by a weak whimper. "Yes." A child's voice, hoarse, fragile. Her heart caught in her chest. She leaned over the rim of the well, gripping the stones, peering into the blackness below. The light was thin, but she could make out movement. Small, pale, curled up against the damp wall. "Oh my God." "Don't move, sweetheart. I'm going to get you out." The well was old, maybe 20 or 30 feet deep, lined with crumbling rock. No rope, no bucket, nothing but decay. Her hands shook as she tore through her pack, yanking out her climbing rope, something she always carried out of habit from her rescue volunteer days. She tied the rope around the base of a nearby pine, checked the knot twice, then lowered the other end down. "Can you grab the rope?" A soft, quivering sound answered her. "It hurts." "Where does it hurt, honey?" Jona asked, lowering herself closer to the opening. "My leg. I can't move." Jona's mind raced. Okay, don't try to move. I'm coming down to you." She looped the rope around her waist and began to descend. The cold air grew heavier the deeper she went, the smell of moss and wet stone pressing close around her. Her boots scraped against the wall, sending pebbles tumbling into the darkness below. When she was halfway down, she saw her. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, dressed in a torn yellow dress, her hair matted with mud. One arm wrapped around a rusted pipe jutting from the wall, the other clutching a filthy stuffed rabbit. Her eyes, wide and gray as storm clouds, met Jona's. "You're okay now," Jona whispered, voice trembling. The girl didn't answer, just stared like she couldn't believe someone was really there. When Jona reached her, she saw the injury. A gash across the girl's leg, already turning purple with bruising. Jona tore a strip from her sleeve and wrapped it around the wound as best she could. "What's your name?" she asked softly. The girl blinked slowly, lips trembling. "Mara?" Jona smiled through the fear knotting in her chest. "That's a beautiful name, Mara. I'm Jona. We're going to climb out, okay?" Mara didn't answer, just clung to the rabbit tighter. It took every ounce of strength Jona had to pull them both upward. The stones were slick, the rope cutting into her palms, her shoulders screaming from the strain. At one point her boot slipped and her heart lurched as they both dropped several inches before she caught herself. "Hold on, Mara. Don't let me fall." "Never," she hissed, pulling again, inch by inch. Her breath came in ragged bursts. Her muscles burned, but finally, the rim of the well was within reach. With one last heave, she lifted the girl up and over, collapsing onto the cold grass beside her. Both of them lay there gasping for air, staring up at the pale gray sky. Jona's arms trembled as she propped herself up. "You're safe now. You're going to be okay." Mara blinked at her weakly, her lips forming a word Jona barely caught. "Mommy?" Jona froze. "Your mom? Is she here?" Mara's face twisted in pain. "She tried to come back for me." Tears blurred Jona's eyes. She looked around the clearing, half expecting someone, anyone to appear. But there was nothing, just the silent trees. "I'll take you home," Jona said gently, gathering the girl into her arms. As she lifted Mara, something fell from the girl's grasp. A small, mud-cucked locket. It cracked open when it hit the ground. Inside was a photograph. A woman's face. And beside her, Jona's breath caught, was herself. The wind whistled through the pines as Jona Rose held the small, mud-cucked locket in her palm. Her fingers shook, not from cold, but from a sudden icy dread. She stared at the photograph, her heart hammering in her chest. It was unmistakable. The woman in the pictures had the same gray eyes, the same high cheekbones, the same crooked smile she had inherited from her mother. But that couldn't be possible. Her mother, Jona Rose, had died years ago in a car accident, or so everyone said. And yet here she was, staring up at Jona from a tiny silver frame, holding a little girl with hair as dark as midnight and a face eerily familiar. Jona dropped the locket back onto the damp grass and took a deep breath. Her gaze shifted to Mara, who lay curled against the earth, clutching the stuffed rabbit like it was the only tether keeping her alive. "Hey," she said softly, kneeling beside her. "Can you tell me what happened? How you ended up down that well?" Mara shivered, eyes wide. "It was scary. The man said I couldn't leave. He said no one would find me." Jona's stomach twisted. "A man? Did you see him?" Mara shook her head. I don't know. I just woke up in the dark, and then I fell." Jona's mind raced. An abandoned well in the middle of nowhere, a missing child, and now a locket linking her to this mystery. Something about it didn't add up. She lifted Mara into her arms and started walking toward the cabin. Each step was careful. The girl's leg made it impossible to move quickly. Still, Jona could feel the blood pounding in her ears, the adrenaline keeping her muscles tense. Back at the cabin, she settled Mara on the sofa and wrapped her in a thick wool blanket. Her eyes fluttered closed, exhausted from fear and cold. Jona rubbed her back gently, trying to soothe her, while her mind spun with questions. The locket sat on the coffee table, catching the dim light of the fireplace she had lit earlier. Jona couldn't stop staring at it. Why did Mara have it? Why was her mother in it? The phone in her pocket buzzed, startling her. She picked it up. It was a local sheriff's number. Her pulse quickened. "Sheriff? Jona Rose speaking," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Miss Rose, we got a report of a missing child near Weller's Ridge. Can you confirm?" The voice on the line was calm but firm. "Yes. I found her down an abandoned well. She's here at my cabin. Her leg is injured, but she's alive." There was a pause on the other end. "Good work, ma'am. We'll send a unit to get her. Stay with her until we are—" She hung up and returned her gaze to Mara, still sleeping under the blanket. Her heart ached with something she couldn't name. The girl had survived something horrific, something that Jona couldn't yet comprehend. And then her eyes drifted back to the photograph in the locket. She leaned over it, inspecting the tiny details. The woman, her mother, was smiling down at the child, holding her close. The resemblance between Mara and herself was undeniable. Same eyes, same delicate curve of the lips. Jona's hands shook as she held the locket close to Mara's face. "Who are you, little one?" she whispered. Mara stirred, groaning softly, half awake. Her eyes opened, and Jona noticed the confusion and fear mirrored in them. "Mommy?" she whispered again. Jona froze. She couldn't answer. She didn't know what to say. Suddenly, a knock came at the door. Her stomach lurched. She didn't wait for permission. She hurried to the door and peeked out. 2 uniformed deputies stood on the porch, eyes scanning the cabin and the surrounding forest. "Are you Ms. Rose?" one of them asked. "Yes," she said, stepping outside. "I found her down the well." The deputies nodded and followed her inside. They examined Mara's injury, nodded approvingly at her first aid work, and gently lifted her into a stretcher. Jona's hand lingered on Mara's arm, unwilling to let go. Can we ask her some questions?" one deputy said quietly. "Yes," Jona whispered. "But be gentle. She's been through enough." As they carried Mara away, the locket slipped from the coffee table and clattered to the floor. Jona picked it up again, staring at the tiny photograph. A sinking feeling settled in her chest. This was no ordinary missing child case. The photograph was a message, a link, a thread that connected Jona Rose to something she had long buried, something she wasn't ready to face. Her mother, somehow, impossibly, was still part of this story. Jona sat on the sofa, staring into the dying flames of the fireplace. Questions spun like the autumn wind outside. Who left Mara in that well? Why? And why did she have a locket with my mother's photograph? She pressed the locket to her chest, feeling a strange warmth radiate through her fingers. It was almost as if the photograph itself was alive, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. A sudden thought struck her. Maybe Mara wasn't just a lost child. She was a key. And if she was, Jona Rose had just been handed a puzzle that would change everything she thought she knew about her life and her family. Jona Rose couldn't sleep that night. The fire in the cabin had burned low, leaving the room bathed in flickering ember shadows, but her mind refused to rest. Every sound, the whistle of wind through the pines, the distant cry of an owl, the creak of her cabin, made her startle. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the locket on her nightstand. The tiny photograph glinted in the dim light. Mara's pale, frightened face pressed against her mother's in the picture haunted Jona. She tried to make sense of it. Why would a little girl, abandoned in a well, have a photograph of my mother? Sleep eluded her. By the time the first pale streaks of morning slid across the horizon, Jona was already dressed in her hiking boots, jacket zipped tight, and roping climbs slung over her shoulder. She couldn't wait for the sheriff's deputies or anyone else. She needed to see the well again. The forest was silent as she returned to the clearing. The frost had melted in places, leaving mud that clung to her boots. The well sat there like a jagged scar on the earth, moss creeping over its edges as if trying to hide its crime. Jona knelt beside it, peering into the darkness. Something felt off. The well hadn't been disturbed much, yet she swore she saw faint scuff marks along the rim and a thin trail of footprints disappearing into the trees. She froze, straining her ears. A rustle, soft, almost imperceptible, came from the edge of the clearing. Jona's hand went to the climbing knife at her belt. "Who's there?" she called, firm. Nothing. She took a careful step toward the tree line. Another rustle. Closer this time. Something moved among the trees. A shadow darted between the trunks, faster than any deer could run. Jona's pulse quickened. A person. Someone watching Mara, or someone who left her there. "Stop!" she shouted, stepping out into the open. The shadow froze. Then slowly, a figure emerged. A man, tall and lean, wearing a hooded jacket that masked most of his face. His eyes, dark and calculating, met hers. "You shouldn't be here," he said, low, rough. "I found her," Jona snapped, her heart hammering. "You left that girl in the well." The man's expression didn't change. He shook his head slowly. "You don't understand. She had to be hidden." "Hidden?" Jona's voice rose. "She's a child. What possible reason could justify leaving her in a well?" The man took a step closer. Jona instinctively moved back, keeping the knife ready. "You don't know what you're dealing with. That girl, she's tied to something much bigger than you or me. You don't want to get involved." "I am involved now," Jona said, trembling but defiant. "She's my responsibility." The man's gaze flicked to the well. "Then you're already too deep. Leave it. Forget her." Jona shook her head. "No, I can't." He sighed, a sign of resignation tinged with fear. Then, in one swift movement, he disappeared into the trees, leaving only the echo of his warning behind. Jona stood frozen, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Too deep. Something bigger? Her gaze returned to the well. The frost around its rim seemed to glisten more brightly now, almost like a warning. She knelt down, tracing the edge with her fingers. She noticed something she hadn't before. A small patch of moss had been disturbed, revealing a set of carved initials. M.A.R. Jona's throat tightened. Mara? Her mind spun. Could this well, hidden away in the forest, have been used before? Had Mara been left here by someone she knew, or was this part of a cycle that went back years, maybe decades? A sudden crack behind her made her whip around. A branch had snapped underfoot. She squinted into the trees, but there was nothing there. Only the wind, or maybe someone watching. Jona rose to her feet, heart pounding. She knew one thing. The man had been right. She had stumbled into something much bigger than she could imagine. But leaving Mara, or ignoring the well, wasn't an option. Her eyes drifted to the forest path, where the trees grew thick and shadows lingered like waiting spirits. Somewhere out there, answers waited. And someone, or something, was following. She pressed the locket to her chest, her mother's face, the girl in her arms, and the unknown force pulling strings behind it all. Jona Rose wasn't about to back down. Not now. Not when a child's life and the secret that touched her very own bloodline hung in the balance. The forest whispered around her, and for the first time in years, she felt the weight of destiny pressing down. The mountains had a secret, and she was about to uncover it. The journey had begun. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The next morning, Jona Rose awoke to the sharp smell of pine smoke from her fireplace. Mara was still asleep, curled beneath the wool blanket, her breathing even and shallow. For a brief moment, Jona allowed herself a sigh of relief. She had survived the night, and so had the child. But that relief was fleeting. The warning from the man in the woods lingered in her mind like a storm cloud. Too deep, something bigger. You don't want to get involved. And now, with the journal and locket in her possession, she knew she had already crossed a line. She was making breakfast when a sudden knock rattled the cabin door. Her heart jumped. She wasn't expecting anyone. The sheriff had said the deputies would pick up Mara, but that wasn't until later. "Who is it?" she called, trying to keep her voice steady. "Open up, Jona. It's me," came a familiar, low voice from outside. Jona froze. She knew that voice immediately. The man from the woods. Her mind raced. Mara was asleep inside, vulnerable. If he came in now, it could be dangerous. She quickly grabbed the knife at her belt and peeked through the window. He stood on the porch, hood pulled low over his face, hands empty. The morning light revealed nothing more than a tall, lean figure, but his posture was tense, almost predatory. Jona opened the door slowly. "Why are you here?" she demanded, keeping the knife hidden at her side. The man's eyes met hers, sharp and cold. "I warned you. I told you to leave the girl alone." "I found her," Jona said firmly, "and I'm not letting her go back into whatever nightmare she came from." He sighed, a sound of frustration and something deeper, regret. "You don't understand what's at stake. That child, she carries a truth that people will kill for. The locket, the well, it's not just a coincidence. You shouldn't have touched it." "I didn't choose this," Jona shot back. "She's a child. I can't just ignore her." The man's gaze flicked past her, toward the cabin's back window where Mara slept. His jaw tightened. "You're brave, I'll give you that. But bravery without knowledge is dangerous. They're watching. They always watch." Jona's blood ran cold. "Who's watching? What do you mean?" The man hesitated. Then he pulled a small folded piece of paper from his jacket and handed it to her. "Read this, then decide if you're smart enough to continue." Jona unfolded the paper carefully. The handwriting was precise, almost mechanical. "Do not trust anyone. The girl is not what she seems. Her past is hidden, her family is hidden, and if you try to uncover it, it will put both of you in danger. The mountain hides secrets older than your mother. If you proceed, the darkness will follow." Jona felt a chill creep up her spine. What does it mean? Why Mara? And my mother? How is she connected? The man shook his head. "I can't tell you everything. You have to discover it yourself. But know this. The people who buried the girl and the truth she carries will stop at nothing to protect it. You're already too involved. There's no turning back." Before Jona could respond, he turned and disappeared into the forest, moving with a speed and silence that made her shiver. She stood on the porch for a long moment, gripping the paper like it was a lifeline. The mountain air was cold, but what froze her more was the thought that someone or something was watching her cabin even now. Jona turned back inside. Mara was still asleep, unaware of the danger lurking just beyond the trees. She knelt beside the child, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're safe," she whispered, though the words felt hollow. "For now." She glanced at the locket on the table, at the photograph of her mother holding Mara, or someone who looked like Mara, and a question formed in her mind. Was this just about a missing child, or was it about everything my family had kept hidden? Her gaze moved toward the journal and papers she had retrieved from the rusted box. Whatever lay ahead, she realized one thing. She had stepped into a world she didn't understand, where every clue came with a shadow, and every shadow came with danger. The man's warning echoed in her mind. The darkness will follow. Jona clenched her fists. She had no choice but to continue. She couldn't leave Mara behind, not now, not ever. The mountain had given her a child crying for help, a locket linking her to the past, and a mystery that would break her heart if she didn't uncover it. And she would uncover it. Jona Rose spent the next morning in restless anticipation. The forest seemed quieter than usual, the wind whispering through the trees with a hollow edge, as if carrying a warning. Mara remained asleep, exhausted from her ordeal in the well, and Jona knew she couldn't leave her side. But she couldn't sit idle either. The clues were piling up, and every second felt like a countdown. She pulled on her boots and grabbed her pack, tucking the locket safely around her neck. The journal lay beneath her arm, its pages still smelling faintly of old paper and damp pine. The words within hinted at something buried beneath Weller's Ridge, something that had been hidden for decades, and she was determined to find out what. The trail to the well was easier to follow now, imprinted with the memory of her earlier trek. As she approached, Jona's eyes scanned the clearing for any sign of disturbance. Footprints, broken branches, even the faintest hint of another presence. It was then she noticed something she hadn't seen before. A small wooden trapdoor, partially concealed by leaves and moss. Her heart skipped a beat. She bent down, brushing the debris away, revealing a crude handle. It looked old but functional. Her mind raced. Could this be connected to Mara's abduction or to the mysterious photograph? She tugged at the handle and, with a groan, the door creaked open, revealing a narrow passage descending into darkness. Jona's breath caught. The mountain had more secrets than she had imagined. She grabbed her flashlight and lowered herself carefully into the passage. The air was damp and smelled of earth and decay. Her footsteps echoed off the stone walls as she moved deeper, following the tunnel that seemed to have been carved long ago. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a small cavern. Stalactites dripped from the ceiling, and the faint sound of water echoed off the walls. But what caught her attention were the markings on the stone, symbols and letters etched into the walls, worn smooth by time but still legible. Her fingers traced them gently. M-A-R. Keep safe until the time is right. Jona's heart skipped. M-A-R. Mara's initials. She moved deeper into the cavern, flashlight beam dancing over more carvings, more symbols. There was a sense of reverence here, as though whoever had built this passage had intended it to hide something sacred or dangerous. Then she saw it, a small alcove, hidden behind a jagged rock formation. Inside, a wooden chest sat, its surface scarred and weathered. She knelt beside it, heart pounding, and slowly lifted the lid. Inside were objects that made her stomach twist. A tiny, worn pair of children's shoes, soaked and moldy. Several old letters, brittle and yellowed, tied together with a faded ribbon. A small porcelain doll, its face cracked but carefully preserved. And at the bottom, another locket, this one containing a faded photograph of Mara's mother holding a baby Jona didn't recognize. Her hands shook. This wasn't just a missing child story. This was a family secret, one that had been buried beneath the mountain for decades. The presence of another locket, this one tied to Mara's real mother, suggested a connection that no one had ever told her. Her thoughts raced. Could Mara really be related to her? Or had someone used her family's history to manipulate her? A sudden sound made her jump, a low, deliberate cough echoing from the tunnel's entrance. "Taught you'd find it," a voice said. Jona spun around. The man from the woods stood there, hood pulled back this time, revealing sharp features and eyes that seemed older than his years. "I told you, there's more to this than you realize." "What is this place?" Jona demanded, voice shaking with a mix of fear and awe. "Why is Mara connected to my family?" The man stepped closer. "Because she carries the legacy your mother tried to protect. That child,
She's tied to secrets that can destroy lives, including yours. The well, the ridge, the locket, it was all designed to keep her safe. But now that you've found it, everything changes. Jona swallowed, gripping the locket around her neck. Safe! She was left in a well. Safe from the world, he corrected. Not from people like you who stumble into the truth too quickly. Jona's mind whirled. The chest, the carvings, the letters, everything pointed to a hidden network of secrets buried beneath Weller's Ridge, linking Mara to a past that was both dangerous and heartbreaking. The man's gaze softened for a fraction of a second. You have to protect her, no matter what. But remember, Jona, the moment you step further, the darkness will follow, and it will not forgive mistakes. Jona nodded slowly, her resolve hardening. She had no choice. Mara was not just a child in need. She was a key, a living connection to a past she never understood, and a future she was now responsible for safeguarding.
Thick clouds that hung low over Weller's Ridge. Jona's mind raced as she prepared for what she knew was inevitable. Someone was following Mara, and they wouldn't stop until they had her. She packed the essentials: flashlight, climbing rope, first aid kit, the letters and journal, and the 2 lockets. Mara was still asleep, exhausted from her ordeal, and Jona couldn't risk waking her just yet. She needed to scout the ridge, understand the network of tunnels and hidden passages, and, most importantly, find any sign of who had been watching. Jona followed the path back to the well, each step cautious, eyes scanning the trees. The wind carried faint sounds, branches cracking under weight, the distant whistle of something moving. Her instincts screamed that she was being followed. And then she saw it. A figure, crouched among the trees, barely visible, observing her. Her pulse spiked. The man from the woods? No, different. This one wore a dark coat, face obscured by a hood, but the way he watched was calculated, patient, predatory. Jona felt a chill run down her spine. Whoever this was, they were waiting for her to make a move. She ducked behind a tree and whispered to herself, "Okay, stay calm, observe first." The figure didn't move for several minutes. Then, slowly, they began to follow her, stepping silently between the trunks. Jona ducked into a thicket, letting the shadows conceal her. She needed a plan. She wasn't about to confront whoever this was without preparation. Back at the cabin, she laid out the journals and letters on the table. She scanned the entries, hoping for a clue. One passage caught her attention. The mountain protects what must survive, but the enemy watches relentlessly. If the child is found, the lineage will be exposed, and the consequences will be deadly. Enemy. The word burned in her mind. Someone was after Mara. Not just anyone, but someone who understood her family's secrets. Someone dangerous. Determined, she prepared a trap. She set small markers along the forest path leading from the ridge to the cabin. Broken branches, faint footprints deliberately left to mislead. A line of twine tied to alert her if anyone crossed. She wasn't just preparing to observe, she was preparing to fight if necessary. Hours passed. Mara woke briefly, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy?" she whispered, although she didn't fully know Jona's role in her life yet. "You're safe here. I won't let anyone hurt you." Mara's eyes were wide but trusting. Jona pressed the locket into her hand. "Keep this with you," she whispered. "It will protect you." As Mara went back to sleep, Jona returned to the ridge. The figure was still there, moving stealthily, almost like a shadow of the forest itself. She followed at a safe distance, careful not to be seen, until the figure stopped at a cluster of rocks near a hidden tunnel entrance she hadn't noticed before. The person disappeared inside. Jona's pulse raced. Whoever they were, They had access to the tunnels, access to the secrets beneath the mountain. This wasn't just about Mara being hidden in the well. They were after something deeper. The family legacy, the hidden bloodline, the secrets her mother had tried to protect. Jona knew she couldn't confront them directly, not yet, but she could gather information. She crept closer, hiding behind a tree, flashlight dimmed, listening for any sound. Then she heard it, a whisper. She doesn't know yet. The bloodline must remain protected. If she discovers the truth, it will unravel everything. The voice sent chills down her spine. Jona's fingers tightened around the journal. Someone knew. Someone was manipulating Mara's life and watching her every move. She retreated into the forest shadows, heart pounding. The enemy was closer than she thought, and the game had only just begun. Jona Rose understood one undeniable truth. She wasn't just protecting Mara from abandonment or danger in the woods. She was protecting a secret that could destroy lives, possibly even hers. And the hidden enemy would stop at nothing to ensure the truth stayed buried. The mountain was no longer just a refuge. It was a battlefield. The forest was quiet, almost unnaturally so. Jona Rose moved cautiously along the ridge, the journal and letters pressed tightly under her arm. Mara was asleep back at the cabin, safe for now. But Jona knew that safety was fragile. Someone was watching, waiting for a mistake, and the mountain itself seemed to hold its breath. She returned to the hidden tunnel, determined to follow the path the stranger had used. The entrance was narrow, half concealed by fallen branches and moss, but Jona had memorized its position. She lowered herself into the darkness, flashlight illuminating damp walls, covered in the familiar carvings she had seen before, symbols that connected the Rose family to this place in ways she was only beginning to understand. Deeper inside, the tunnel opened into a larger cavern, where the faint smell of old wood and earth mingled. And there, in the dim light, were boxes, stacks of them, each labeled with dates, initials, and cryptic memos. Jona's eyes fell on one marked, "For Mara, 1996. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were photographs, letters, and keepsakes. Among them, a series of letters addressed to her mother, Jona Rose. "Anna, you must hide her well. If anyone discovers the child's bloodline, the consequences will be fatal. The child is the key to what we protect, and Mara must never know the truth too soon." Jona's heart skipped. The letters confirmed it. Mara's lineage was tied directly to her mother. This wasn't coincidence. Mara was part of her family, though how exactly was still unclear. She sifted through more papers and found another photograph. A woman holding a baby, standing beside a man whose face was familiar in silhouette. The baby's dark eyes stared back at her with a piercing intensity. Jona's breath caught. That was Mara. And beside her, her own mother. Jona sank to the ground, overwhelmed. "Mara, your family," she whispered. The journal offered more clarity. It spoke of a hidden branch of the Rose family, one that had been secret for decades. Mara's mother had been part of this branch, protecting something of immense value, something that required keeping her child hidden, safe from those who would exploit the bloodline. The well, the tunnels, the carvings, they were all measures to safeguard the child. And now, Jona understood why the man in the woods and the stranger watching her cabin had been so insistent. Mara's bloodline was not just valuable, it was dangerous. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the cavern. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Someone else was here. Jona's heart raced. She grabbed a small bundle of letters, tucking them into her jacket, and pressed herself against the wall. A figure emerged, a woman, face partially obscured by shadow. "You shouldn't be here."
the woman said, voice sharp but trembling with urgency. "The child, she's too young to understand. If the wrong people find her, it'll ruin everything." "Who are you, and why is Mara connected to my mother?" Jona demanded. The woman's eyes softened. "I was supposed to watch over her. Your mother, Anna, she and I tried to protect the child, to keep her safe from those who would use her. But now you found her, and the truth will change everything." Jonah's mind spun. She wasn't just a caretaker anymore. She was a protector of a legacy, a bloodline, and a secret that had been buried for decades. The woman stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You must understand, Jonah. Mara is more than just a child. She carries knowledge, power, a connection to our family that some will kill for. And the people who left her in that well, they are only the beginning. There are others, stronger, dangerous, waiting for you to slip." Jonah clenched her fists. "Then I'll protect her. I'll do whatever it takes. No one will hurt her." The woman nodded, relief flickering in her eyes. "Good, but you have to move quickly. The enemy knows she's awake now, and they'll come for her sooner than you think. The mountain has kept her hidden this long, but it won't protect her forever." Jonah swallowed hard. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her chest. Mara wasn't just a child in need of rescue. She was family. She was a living connection to secrets and danger that had spanned decades. And now, Jona Rose had to face it all, head on. She clutched the locket around her neck. The mountain had given her Mara, and now it was demanding she uncover the truth and defend it at any cost. The shadows in the cavern seemed to deepen, whispering of the dangers that lay ahead.
That night, Mara stood on the ridge alone, looking out at the forest beneath the moonlight. The shadows had returned, yes, but she was no longer afraid. She had the strength, the knowledge, and the courage to face whatever came next. The mountain whispered around her, and Mara Rose, the air, felt its promise. She was ready for the challenges ahead. She was ready to defend the legacy that had been entrusted to her. The shadows would return, but so would the mountain's chosen guardian. The ridge was alive with tension. Mara Rose stood at the entrance of the cavern, the wind whipping around her like an omen. The shadows she had faced before were nothing compared to this. Their leader had returned, stronger, smarter, and more ruthless, wielding knowledge of the mountain and Mara's bloodline that even Jonah hadn't anticipated. "You're ready," Jonah said quietly, standing beside her. "But remember, strength alone won't protect you. You need courage, intelligence, and trust in the mountain." Mara nodded, gripping the locket tightly. Its warmth seemed to pulse with energy, a reminder of the generations who had come before her, guardians who had protected their secrets with every ounce of courage. Suddenly, a chilling voice echoed from the trees. "So, the child has grown. Let's see if she truly deserves the mountain's gift." From the shadows emerged the enemy's leader, masked and cloaked, radiating menace. Behind him, dozens of followers fanned out, surrounding the ridge. Mara could feel their intention, the desire to seize her, to harness the legacy she carried. "Jonah, stay with Mara," the leader said, voice cutting through the wind. "Hand her over, and perhaps the mountain will forgive you." Mara shook her head. "You won't take me. Not now, not ever." The first clash began. Mara moved with precision, using every lesson Jonah had taught her. She darted through the forest, leading small groups of attackers into natural traps, fallen logs, hidden pits, and rock slides she had memorized from her training. The mountain itself seemed to bend to her will, as if guiding her steps. The leader confronted her directly at the cavern entrance. Mara's pulse raced, but fear did not control her. Instead, she channeled every memory of the well, of Jonah's guidance, of the mountain's whispers.
She felt the weight of her bloodline settle into her, a deep, resolute strength that made her unyielding. "You cannot control what is mine," she said, voice steady. "The mountain protects its chosen, and I am its guardian." The leader lunged, but Mara anticipated every move. Using the cavern's natural layout and the carvings she had studied, she maneuvered him into a narrow passage where he could no longer fight freely. In one swift motion, she sealed the entrance with a rock slide, cutting off his escape and leaving him trapped. The remaining followers, seeing their leader incapacitated, fled into the forest, disappearing like shadows at dawn. Mara stood at the cavern's mouth, chest heaving, the wind carrying the scent of pine and earth. She had faced the ultimate test and passed. Jona emerged from the trees, smiling proudly. "You did it, Mara. The mountain recognizes you as its true guardian." Mara turned to the ridge, looking over the valley she now swore to protect. She understood that this trial was not just about defeating enemies. It was about embracing her responsibility, her courage, and her connection to a legacy older than she could imagine. "I'm ready," Mara said softly, feeling the mountain's energy flow through her. "I will protect it. I will protect our legacy, always." The wind whispered through the peaks, carrying a message across the ridge. The mountain had found its guardian, and the legacy of the Rose family was safe in her hands. Jona Rose, once a frightened child in a well, now stood fully as the heir, the protector, the warrior, and the chosen guardian of Weller's Ridge. The mountain had made its choice, and Mara had risen to meet it. The morning sun spilled across Weller's Ridge, bathing the valley in a golden glow. The mountain seemed alive, its peaks jagged yet protective, whispering through the wind as if calling Mara forward. For weeks, Jona Rose had patrolled the ridges, learned the secret tunnels, and mastered the symbols carved into the cavern walls. Yet something gnawed at her, a feeling she couldn't shake, a sense that the bloodline she carried was connected to something even deeper, something hidden within the very heart of the mountain itself. Jona Rose, who had become Mara's mentor, guardian, and mother, observed her from the porch of their cabin. The older woman had aged gracefully, the lines on her face telling stories of battles fought, secrets uncovered, and nights spent worrying over Mara's safety. Today, however, her eyes carried a glint of anticipation, and Mara could feel the weight of a revelation about to unfold. "Mara," Jona said, her voice soft but firm, "you're ready. Today, we uncover something that's been hidden for generations, something your ancestors left behind specifically for the chosen heir. It's the heirloom, the object that carries the mountain's power and the secrets of our bloodline." Mara's heart leapt. "Heirloom?" she asked, eyes wide. "What is it? Where is it?" Jona stood and gestured toward the ridge. "It's deeper in the tunnels, in a chamber that even I haven't fully explored. The carvings led to it, and only the heir can enter safely. It's powerful, dangerous if misused. But it's yours to protect, Mara. It's part of your destiny." A thrill ran through Mara's veins. All her training, all her learning, all the trials she had faced, the shadows, the enemies, the legacy, had led to this moment. She followed Jona to the hidden entrance beneath the ridge, where the faint carvings of triangles and dots marked the doorway. "Remember," Jona said, placing a hand on Mara's shoulder, "the mountain tests those who enter. Courage alone isn't enough. You must be calm, focused, and attuned to the energy around you. The heirloom will recognize you if you are truly ready, but it will reject anyone with ill intentions." Mara nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle in her chest. She had faced enemies before, yes, but this was different. This wasn't about survival. It was about legacy,
knowledge, and the protection of generations. The entrance was narrow, hidden behind layers of roots and rocks. Mara slipped through first, flashlight in hand, illuminating the damp walls lined with carvings she had studied for months. The carvings shifted in subtle ways as she progressed. Symbols she had memorized revealed hidden steps, ledges, and small alcoves she had memorized from her training. Every sense Mara had honed, the ones Jona had taught her, guided her deeper into the mountain. Hours seemed to pass as they descended. The air grew cooler, the scent of earth and stone mingling with something else, something metallic, almost magnetic. Mara's pulse quickened. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. Jona nodded. The energy of the heirloom were close. Finally, they entered a vast chamber, carved naturally by the mountain, yet refined by human hands. Stalactites hung like jagged chandeliers, and the walls glimmered with mineral veins that caught the dim light of their flashlights. At the center of the pedestal stood a stone pedestal, intricately carved with the same symbols that lined the tunnels. A triangle enclosing 3 dots, the ancient mark of the Rose bloodline. And on the pedestal rested a small, unassuming object. At first glance, it appeared to be an ordinary orb of stone, smooth and dark, yet it seemed to pulse with a faint inner glow, as if it contained a heartbeat of its own. Mara stepped closer, awe washing over her. "Is that it?" she breathed solemnly. Jona nodded. "That is the heirloom. It has been hidden for centuries, waiting for the heir to claim it. It carries knowledge, power, and the responsibility of our family. Touch it, and it will recognize you, or reject you if you are unworthy." Mara swallowed, nerves and excitement mingling in her chest. She extended her hand, her fingers trembling, and brushed the surface of the orb. Instantly, a surge of energy shot through her. Light flickered within the stone, growing brighter until it enveloped her entirely. She felt memories, sensations, and knowledge, ancient and immediate, flood her mind. Visions came first. Generations of Rose family members protecting the mountain, deciphering symbols, guarding tunnels, and making sacrifices to ensure the safety of the bloodline. She saw her mother, Jona Rose, and even glimpses of her own younger self in the well, a silent thread connecting the past, present, and future.
She hung up and returned her gaze to Mara, still sleeping under the blanket. Her heart ached with something she couldn't name. The girl had survived something horrific, something that Jona couldn't yet comprehend. And then her eyes drifted back to the photograph in the locket. She leaned over it, inspecting the tiny details. The woman, her mother, was smiling down at the child, holding her close. The resemblance between Mara and herself was undeniable. Same eyes, same delicate curve of the lips. Jona's hands shook as she held the locket close to Mara's face. "Who are you, little one?" she whispered. Mara stirred, groaning softly, half awake. Her eyes opened, and Jona noticed the confusion and fear mirrored in them. "Mommy?" she whispered again. Jona froze. She couldn't answer. She didn't know what to say. Suddenly, a knock came at the door. Her stomach lurched. She didn't wait for permission. She hurried to the door and peeked out. 2 uniformed deputies stood on the porch, eyes scanning the cabin and the surrounding forest. "Are you Ms. Rose?" one of them asked. "Yes," she said, stepping outside. "I found her down the well." The deputies nodded and followed her inside. They examined Mara's injury, nodded approvingly at her first aid work, and gently lifted her into a stretcher. Jona's hand lingered on Mara's arm, unwilling to let go. Can we ask her some questions?" one deputy said quietly. "Yes," Jona whispered. "But be gentle. She's been through enough." As they carried Mara away, the locket slipped from the coffee table and clattered to the floor. Jona picked it up again, staring at the tiny photograph. A sinking feeling settled in her chest. This was no ordinary missing child case. The photograph was a message, a link, a thread that connected Jona Rose to something she had long buried, something she wasn't ready to face. Her mother, somehow, impossibly, was still part of this story. Jona sat on the sofa, staring into the dying flames of the fireplace. Questions spun like the autumn wind outside. Who left Mara in that well? Why? And why did she have a locket with my mother's photograph? She pressed the locket to her chest, feeling a strange warmth radiate through her fingers. It was almost as if the photograph itself was alive, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. A sudden thought struck her. Maybe Mara wasn't just a lost child. She was a key. And if she was, Jona Rose had just been handed a puzzle that would change everything she thought she knew about her life and her family. Jona Rose couldn't sleep that night. The fire in the cabin had burned low, leaving the room bathed in flickering ember shadows, but her mind refused to rest. Every sound, the whistle of wind through the pines, the distant cry of an owl, the creak of her cabin, made her startle. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the locket on her nightstand. The tiny photograph glinted in the dim light. Mara's pale, frightened face pressed against her mother's in the picture haunted Jona. She tried to make sense of it. Why would a little girl, abandoned in a well, have a photograph of my mother? Sleep eluded her. By the time the first pale streaks of morning slid across the horizon, Jona was already dressed in her hiking boots, jacket zipped tight, and roping climbs slung over her shoulder. She couldn't wait for the sheriff's deputies or anyone else. She needed to see the well again. The forest was silent as she returned to the clearing. The frost had melted in places, leaving mud that clung to her boots. The well sat there like a jagged scar on the earth, moss creeping over its edges as if trying to hide its crime. Jona knelt beside it, peering into the darkness. Something felt off. The well hadn't been disturbed much, yet she swore she saw faint scuff marks along the rim and a thin trail of footprints disappearing into the trees. She froze, straining her ears. A rustle, soft, almost imperceptible, came from the edge of the clearing. Jona's hand went to the climbing knife at her belt. "Who's there?" she called, firm. Nothing. She took a careful step toward the tree line. Another rustle. Closer this time. Something moved among the trees. A shadow darted between the trunks, faster than any deer could run. Jona's pulse quickened. A person. Someone watching Mara or someone who left her there. "Stop!" she shouted, stepping out into the open. The shadow froze. Then slowly, a figure emerged. A man, tall and lean, wearing a hooded jacket that masked most of his face. His eyes, dark and calculating, met hers. "You shouldn't be here," he said, low, rough. "I found her," Jona snapped, her heart hammering. "You left that girl in the well." The man's expression didn't change. He shook his head slowly. "You don't understand. She had to be hidden." "Hidden?" Jona's voice rose. "She's a child. What possible reason could justify leaving her in a well?" The man took a step closer. Jona instinctively moved back, keeping the knife ready. "You don't know what you're dealing with. That girl, she's tied to something much bigger than you or me. You don't want to get involved." "I am involved now," Jona said, trembling but defiant. "She's my responsibility." The man's gaze flicked to the well. "Then you're already too deep. Leave it. Forget her." Jona shook her head. "No, I can't."
He sighed, a sign of resignation tinged with fear. Then, in one swift movement, he disappeared into the trees, leaving only the echo of his warning behind. Jona stood frozen, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Too deep. Something bigger? Her gaze returned to the well. The frost around its rim seemed to glisten more brightly now, almost like a warning. She knelt down, tracing the edge with her fingers. She noticed something she hadn't before. A small patch of moss had been disturbed, revealing a set of carved initials. M-A-R. Jona's throat tightened. Mara? Her mind spun. Could this well, hidden away in the forest, have been used before? Had Mara been left here by someone she knew, or was this part of a cycle that went back years, maybe decades? A sudden crack behind her made her whip around. A branch had snapped underfoot. She squinted into the trees, but there was nothing there. Only the wind, or maybe someone watching. Jona rose to her feet, heart pounding. She knew one thing. The man had been right. She had stumbled into something much bigger than she could imagine. But leaving Mara, or ignoring the well, wasn't an option. Her eyes drifted to the forest path, where the trees grew thick and shadows lingered like waiting spirits. Somewhere out there, answers waited. And someone, or something, was following. She pressed the locket to her chest, her mother's face, the girl in her arms, and the unknown force pulling strings behind it all. Jona Rose wasn't about to back down. Not now. Not when a child's life and the secret that touched her very own bloodline hung in the balance. The forest whispered around her, and for the first time in years, she felt the weight of destiny pressing down. The mountains had a secret, and she was about to uncover it.
One of the followers lunged toward her, but Mara raised her hand, and a force, subtle but powerful, pushed him back. The heirloom responded to her intent, a tool she could wield, but also a teacher guiding her actions. "Jona, follow me," Mara called. They darted through the hidden tunnels, the intruders pursuing, but Mara's connection with the heirloom allowed her to anticipate their moves. She triggered subtle traps, loose rocks, shifting shadows, and hidden pits. Each obstacle delayed the intruders, giving her precious time to escape. Finally, they reached a concealed exit leading to the ridge. Mara emerged into the open air, the sun casting long shadows across the valley. The intruders were trapped in the tunnels below, disoriented and unable to find their way. The mountain had protected them, as it always had, but now Mara understood it would do so only as long as she honored her role. Breathless, she turned to Jona. "It's more than just an object," Mara said, holding the orb aloft. "It's a guide, a protector, and it trusts me." Jona placed a hand on her shoulder. "And you've earned that trust. You've passed every trial, faced every shadow, and proven you are worthy. But remember, Mara, this is just the beginning. The heirloom carries power, yes, but also responsibility. Those who seek it will never stop. You must remain vigilant, wise, and courageous." Mara nodded, the weight of her role settling into her bones. She could feel the mountain beneath her feet, steady, eternal, protective. The heirloom pulsed in her hand, resonating with her heartbeat, and she understood something fundamental. She and the mountain were now connected in ways deeper than blood or lineage. She was not just a protector of a secret. She was part of the mountain's living will. Hours passed as Mara and Jona sat on the ridge, the heirloom resting between them. Mara felt the energy slowly subside, but the knowledge remained. She had inherited centuries of wisdom, courage, and guidance, and she knew that every choice she made from now on would honor the mountain, the bloodline, and the generations who had come before her. As dusk fell, Mara looked out over the peaks. Shadows lingered in the valleys, reminders that danger was never far away. But Mara no longer felt fear. She felt power tempered with wisdom, courage tempered with humility, and a connection to something eternal. "The mountain has chosen," she whispered to herself, "and I am ready." Jona smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "Then let's go home, Mara. Tomorrow we continue our work. There's much to protect, much to learn, and the mountain will need us both." Mara nodded. She held the heirloom close, feeling its warmth, its guidance, and its pulse. She understood now what it meant to be the heir, guardian, protector, and part of a legacy that spanned generations. And as night fell over Weller's Ridge, the mountain whispered its approval. The stars glimmered above, and Mara Rose, the chosen heir, stepped forward into her destiny, ready for the trials, the shadows, and the secrets yet to come. The ridge was unusually silent that morning. The fog hung low among the pines, like smoke from a distant fire. Mara Rose stood at the edge of the clearing, the heirloom cradled in her hands. Its pulse was steady, like a heartbeat of the mountain itself, and Mara could feel its energy flowing into her very bones. After the attack from the shadows, she knew one thing with certainty. She couldn't protect the mountain alone. The heirloom was powerful, yes, but her responsibility and the danger she faced were too great for a single guardian. Jona Rose, ever vigilant, approached silently, her eyes scanning the valley below. "You've done well, Mara, but you're ready for the next step. The mountain is ancient, and it has allies, others who have been protecting its secrets for centuries. It's time you met them." Mara's pulse quickened. "Allies?" she asked. "Who are they?" Jona smiled faintly, a mix of pride and caution in her eyes. "They're the Hidden Council, the descendants of families bound to the mountain's legacy, sworn to protect it alongside the Roses. They've been waiting for the heir to emerge, and now you've been recognized." Mara stared at the ridge, her mind racing. The thought of others guarding the mountain, of a secret council, of ancient bloodlines interwoven with her own, it was almost too much.
Comprehend. And yet, deep in her core, she felt the truth of it. The mountain was calling, guiding her toward her next destiny. Jona led her along a narrow trail, winding through the ridges and hidden passes Mara had explored only in part before. Each step felt deliberate, as though the mountain itself was paving the way. After an hour's trek, they arrived at a secluded cavern, hidden behind a cascading waterfall. The roar of water masked the entrance perfectly, concealing what lay beyond. "This is where they meet," Jona whispered, gesturing toward the waterfall. "Enter with caution, but do not fear. They will recognize you." Mara nodded, feeling the heirloom's warmth pulse against her chest. She stepped forward, parting the curtain of water, and entered the cavern. The sound of rushing water echoed off stone walls, blending with a faint hum, low and resonant, almost like the mountain itself was singing. Inside, the cavern opened into a vast chamber, illuminated by natural light filtering through cracks in the ceiling. Shadows moved among the stalagmites and stone formations, figures clad in muted cloaks, their faces partially obscured by hoods. Despite the concealment, Mara sensed no hostility. Instead, there was a palpable air of anticipation, as though the mountain itself had been waiting for her arrival. A tall figure stepped forward, removing their hood. Silver hair glinted in the light, and eyes sharp as a hawk's locked onto Mara. "You are the heir," the figure said, voice echoing off the walls. "Mara Rose. The mountain has chosen wisely." Mara swallowed, her grip tightening on the heirloom. "I am," she replied, "but I cannot protect it alone. That is why I am here." The figure nodded, And so you shall not. We are the hidden council, bound by blood, oath, and duty to the mountain. For centuries, we have safeguarded its secrets, guided by the energy that flows through the heirloom and the lineage of the roses. One by one, the other members of the council revealed themselves, their faces lined with age, wisdom, and determination. Each carried an object, a token or a tool, infused with the mountain's energy, linking them to the same ancient legacy Mara had inherited. Some held orbs similar to hers, others wielded staffs carved from ancient trees, and even one bore a ceremonial blade etched with the same triangular symbols she had seen in the tunnels. A woman with eyes like molten amber stepped forward. The mountain has been quiet since the last shadow fell, but their reach has grown. You, Mara, have awakened the full power of the heirloom. That makes you a target, but also a beacon. Your presence has called us together. Mara's mind swirled with questions. How do we fight them? The shadows are organized, and they've already attacked me once. I barely survived. The amber-eyed woman smiled faintly. Survival alone is not enough. You must learn to wield the mountain's power in harmony with us. Each of us carries a fragment of the knowledge, the energy, and the protection you need. Together, we form a network, an unbroken web of guardians. You are the heir, the focal point, but the council is the support, the guidance, and the shield. Mara studied each member, noting the confidence in their posture, the aura of quiet strength surrounding them. "Then I am ready," she said, determination blazing in her eyes. "Teach me. Show me how to protect the mountain, the heirloom, and our legacy." The council moved as one, leading Mara to a section of the cavern lined with intricate carvings. These symbols were older, more complex than anything Mara had seen before. They formed a map of the mountain, its hidden tunnels, its secret chambers, and, most intriguingly, places where the energy of the heirloom was strongest. "This," the silver-haired leader explained, "is the pattern of protection. Every guardian of the mountain must learn it, memorize it, and feel it. It is not just geography. It is the flow of energy, the heartbeat of the mountain itself. Only when you understand it can you truly defend it." Mara's eyes widened as she traced the carvings with her fingers. The symbols seemed to shimmer in response to her touch, resonating with the heirloom in her hands. She could feel the subtle vibrations beneath her fingertips, the energy pulsing through the stones, and the echoes of generations of guardians who had walked this path before her. "This is incredible," she whispered, brushing the dust from a scroll. "We've been guarding more than just an object. We've been safeguarding history itself." The amber-eyed woman stepped beside her. "And now, Mara, you are part of that history. The heirloom chose wisely, but the shadows will adapt. You must learn, plan, and act decisively. The council is your strength, but you are the focal point. The energy of the mountain flows through you, and your decisions will shape the outcome of everything we protect." Mara nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. She held the heirloom close. The pulse of the mountain, the wisdom of the council, and the weight of her family's legacy all converged within her. She was ready. The shadows would strike again, but this time, Jona Rose and the hidden council would meet them on their terms. The mountain hummed in approval. The cavern walls glimmered with ancient energy, and Jona Rose stepped fully into her role, not just as the heir,
but as the leader of a hidden network sworn to protect Weller's Ridge and the secrets it held for generations to come. Embracing her destiny as the living guardian of her family's legacy. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.